My name is Chris Blevins, and I am the, gosh, it's weird to say now, I'm the program director for Surgical Technology Program here at TCC. A little bit about my background. We are a military family, and I had the great privilege of working at Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany, caring for our wounded warriors from downrange. And I'm also the emergency medical liaison for the CERT team, or the Community Emergency Response Team of Ellis County. So long background, I've been doing this for a while, and thank you for spending your Tuesday afternoon with me. I hope that it's entertaining and you learned something. I know it's been a really long day, so I'll go through my presentation, and if it lasts an hour, awesome. If not, then we'll have time for questions, and then we'll end a little bit early. All right. So today is I'm talking about the coronavirus, COVID-19, and how to combat contamination. Right now, in this time period, we have all turned into these medical experts, some better than others. And I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about what you should be doing to protect yourself and others, and then kind of what to expect from the different kinds of personal protective equipment that are out there that we lovingly in healthcare call PPE. So let's get started. Also, I'll try to monitor the chat while I'm talking, so may not be very good at doing both at the same time, so I appreciate your patience. All right, so what is the coronavirus? Unfortunately, it's not a really great beer that I'm pretty sure we're all going to go have after these meetings from Connections Week. But why Corona? Well, Corona in Spanish actually means crown. And so that's why they named the beer Corona, and that's why you see a crown on their labeling. And so I guess scientists thought that the protein markers that are they look like the spikes on the surface of the COVID virus, that they resemble a crown. And so hence where we get coronavirus from. So what is it made out of? All right, well, viruses need hosts. And the reason that they need hosts is for replication. All right, so most viruses are made of three different things: RNA, a protein marker, and then a lipid membrane. And there's an example of that. This is what the coronavirus is made out of up here. And so RNA actually is basically a messenger. It holds the recipe for DNA for being able to replicate or make more viral cells. And the protein markers are the way that the virus actually attaches to its host cell, and it's how it transmits the RNA. All right, so you can kind of imagine that as the exit off of the highway for RNA to travel and then to get into the host. And then all of those items are surrounded by a lipid membrane, and lipid is just a fancy word for fat. So what's the big deal, right? Why is coronavirus or COVID-19 changing the way that we operate from a day-to-day basis? And where is the fear coming from? Well, we have had outbreaks in the past. You've heard them talk about the Spanish flu, obviously decades, 100 years ago. But in the recent decade, we've actually had two major outbreaks as well. You might remember SARS from 2003, and then H1N1 from 2009. So SARS stands for Sudden Acute Respiratory Syndrome, and H1N1 was also referred to as swine flu. Why is that? Because the virus was first actually found in pigs or pork, and then that contaminated meat was consumed, and that's how it transitioned from the pig to human hosts. So there are two things that we look at when we're trying to decide if a virus is, super dangerous or not. And those two things are the ease of transition. So how easily did it transfer or mutate from its animal host to the human host? And then the mortality rate. So how often is it killing its hosts? And so, for instance, the yearly influenza virus that we are dealing with every year, that is really easily transmitted from human to human, but thankfully not that many people die from influenza, especially if you've had the vaccine. Well, so the difference between SARS in 2003 and H1N1 in 2009 is that SARS had, it wasn't that easy for SARS to transition from human to human, but it had a really high mortality rate. So if you did catch SARS, the chances of you passing from it were extremely high. On the other hand, H1N1 was more easily passed from human to human. In fact, my husband got H1N1 when we lived in Germany, but the mortality rate was a lot lower. So just because you contracted swine flu didn't mean that you were going to die from it. Now here's COVID. Why in the world are we so scared of COVID? Because COVID is easily transmittable between human to human, and it has a devastatingly high mortality rate. I believe it's the third leading cause of death in the world right now, as a CNN report that I listened to the other day. So very scary. And we also don't have any herd immunity. So our bodies have never seen COVID before. So we don't have any natural antibodies, or another way to say that is resistance to the COVID virus. So this is brand new. So just as SARS is an acronym, COVID is also an acronym, and that stands for Coronavirus Disease of 2019, because that's when it was first discovered. So a little history. All right, so let's talk about the spread of a virus. So I'm sorry, I almost said H1N1. Coronavirus is actually droplets that is transmitted through the air, kind of like an aerosol. And this video is a great example of how that happens when we breathe, when we open our mouth, if we sneeze, and especially if we cough. So you can see that the droplets are very condensed and they're high in the air. And of course, gravity will take over, and gravity will naturally, after so many inches or feet, then it causes the droplets to go down. And so this is a great example of that. So you can see the further you are away, how the droplets are actually lower in the ground. Or towards the ground, and that's because of their weight. All right, so why the social distancing? Well, in social distancing, I'll talk while I play this video. It's a great example. So this video shows how droplets can flow through a room that's closed. All right, so if you cough, it's now an aerosol cloud and it travels through your corridor. So the further you are away from those droplets, the less of the virus is near you that you could possibly then breathe in. It gets into your lungs, and then less of the viral particles for you to have, and hopefully a lower chance of contracting the disease. All right, so what are some of the symptoms? This is obviously very broad kind of slide and list of the symptoms. And what's crazy is that some people are having symptoms that are very similar to the common cold, but then other people are having very severe systemic kind of disease process that's happening. So because it is a respiratory disease, your lungs are not able to take in as much air. Patients are developing pneumonia, and some are even needing assistance from a mechanical ventilator. Then you have renal failure that's happening as well. So they're having acute damage that's actually leading to kidney failure. A lot of patients are coming in and having symptoms of diarrhea in their GI system. And then, of course, from a cardiovascular standpoint, it's causing a lot of arrhythmias or incorrect heartbeats. It's actually causing clotting to happen at a faster rate than typical for our bodies. And then, of course, all of this is having hypertension or a raise in our blood pressure for our patients as well. So why is there this massive inflammatory response? Well, we have certain cells in our immune system that are called cytokines, and they are basically one of the ways we can describe it is they're kind of like the kid who tattletales on everybody all the time. So you have a cytokine, it recognizes that there may be a potential antigen in your body, and it yells and it hollers so that all of the other types of immune cells can then sweep in and handle business, right? Get the kid who's doing the bad thing on the playground and put them in timeout. And then, so it's cytokines, when they've done that and they've alerted the rest of the system, then their job is done. But for some reason in this virus, when our bodies recognize it, we are having what we call a cytokine storm. So instead of a cytokine coming, telling the rest of the immune system that something's going wrong and then leaving, they continue to come over and over and over again. And this is causing a massive inflammation all over the body of the patients. And many times it happens to lead to something that we call ARDS, or acute respiratory distress syndrome. And another unusual thing that's happening with COVID is that these crazy symptoms and signs are happening in patients with and without comorbidities. So for example, diabetes or morbid obesity, those with an impaired immune response, and then of course our geriatric population as well. So this is kind of baffling to our medical providers all over, and one of the reasons why it's so important for you to protect yourself. All right, so next, so what do you do, right? What is it that you're supposed to be wearing? And we really, really recommend that you wear a mask. This is a respiratory disease. And so wearing a mask is very important in not only protecting you from others who may have COVID, but also protecting others from you in case you are also a carrier of the virus. And so the caveat here is that you have to wear the mask properly. And this is something I saw on Instagram that is happening in the UK, and what's happened here is it's a great example of improper mask wearing. So you have this lady on the far right in black, no mask. Then you have this one who is only protecting her chin. This one that not only, well, she had a mask, and that was a really good try, but now she's, number one, touching the mask, and number two, she's pulled it away so that it's not protecting anything. And then this one is probably the most protected, but still, she's got major gaps here on the sides of her cheeks, and viral spread does not just happen directly in front of you. These droplets and air will find any opening, so you have to make sure that you have a proper fit of your mask. And let's talk about our different choices, if you will. So We in the operating room use surgical masks or procedural masks. And it's important to note that these particular masks were not designed to protect you against airborne microbes. And a great example of that would be tuberculosis. And then some studies and research are showing right now that the COVID droplets are so tiny that they too are getting into masks that are necessarily protective against airborne diseases, even though this is a droplet precaution. So I have a couple of examples of those masks. You'll notice these masks are more than one ply, right? And surgical masks and procedural masks usually have a wire. And this wire is so that it forms properly over your nose and around your cheeks so that you get a better seal. Remember, it's got to go over your nose and your mouth to do you any good. This is another example of the ones that we wear in the operating room. Same thing, it has that wire over the nose to be able to protect you and make a better seal. And then these straps actually tie around the back of our head, and that's to provide a better seal and to make sure that the mask is secure while we're moving and bending our head and turning in the operating room. Then we have the N95 masks. Now these masks are made to protect against airborne microbes or viruses. They are much thicker. They're definitely harder to breathe in, all right? The 95 stands for 95%. So that means that they are certified to protect you from approximately 95% of airborne particles or viral microbes, if you will. So I have an example of one here. Now this is a KN95 mask. These are very expensive, and you may wonder what the difference is between KN95 and an N95, and that is where it was certified. So the KN95 masks are actually certified in China, whereas N95 masks are certified in the United States. So from a healthcare standpoint, we use N95 masks in the US, and we typically don't allow the Chinese certified masks. But because there is a shortage and there is such a great need for these masks for our healthcare providers, then the CDC has kind of loosened their restrictions so that we can purchase KN95 masks right now and hopefully increase our supply. And then of course you have the cloth masks. So these cloth masks, this is a super cute one, are designed and they're made for those of us who are not in healthcare to be able to wear. What's important about these masks is, once again, it needs to be able to completely cover your nose and your mouth. And it needs to be, what they're recommending is 3-ply, which means that it has 3 layers. And they're great because you can rewash them and it will help you be able, or I'm sorry, you can reuse them by washing the masks. And all you have to do is wash it on hot and dry it. And they are saying that that is sufficient to kill virus and then be able to use it again. So very, very important. Number one, if you hold it up to the light and you can see through it, that's not going to protect you. The weave of that cloth isn't tight enough. So if the light can get through it, the COVID virus can get through it as well. And then lastly, just know that all of these masks are not perfect. So you never ever have 100% guaranteed that that coronavirus is not going to be contagious when you have this and you're in an area full of people. So lastly, I want to talk about these N95 masks because now that the KN95 is being sold, I actually saw them on Groupon the other day. people are having, I think, a false sense of security when they have these masks. But these masks are only 95% effective when you've been fit tested for that. And I have put a picture on the bottom right-hand corner, or I guess it's your left-hand corner, of an example of what that is. So we are fit tested for masks in the operating room and in hospitals. And that is to make sure that we get a seal circumferentially all the way around the mask, and that seal remains even when we are moving, when we're turning our heads, when we're bending over, and when we speak. So that fit testing is done in the hospitals, and that's the only way that you know which shape of mask works best for your face and provides you with that, that extra layer of protection. Let me see if there's anything in the mask or in the chat. No. Okay, so we'll continue on. All right, so here's just a little more about the efficacy of masks. So there's a saying, we say the solution to pollution is dilution. So as I said, none of these masks are going to be a protection that guarantees that you won't get COVID, all right? But it definitely minimizes your the droplet expulsion, and it really minimizes your risk. Not only does it just minimize it, but if you are, I guess, let's say, if you are exposed to 1 million COVID viral particles, and that's without a mask. But when you wear a mask, maybe now you're only exposed to 200 viral particles. Well, because of that dilution of particle exposure, your likelihood of contracting the disease is a lot lower than had you not worn a mask at all. And this is also another great way for us to do what we call source control. So not only are you being protected from others who have coronavirus, but you're also protecting those people that you're near in case you too are a carrier of the virus. So there was a research done in July by Dr. Sung Lee, and it said 36% of COVID people that tested positive for COVID were actually asymptomatic. It means they did not have any symptoms whatsoever when they were tested. So you could be a carrier of the virus and be exposing others without even knowing it. So once again, even more important to wear the mask, especially if you're not able to socially distance. And we have the 3 C's of transmission. So I think a lot of people say, well, when is the right way or the right time for me to wear a mask? So if you're not able to distance yourself consistently at least 6 feet apart, then you need a mask. So closed spaces, crowded settings, and close contact. If you'll remember those 3 C's, and if any of those apply to that situation, you should have a mask on. All right, and then once again, mask must be worn over your nose and your mouth all the time. And then once you've put that mask on, you do not need to touch it again. So you can spread viral particles that you've touched with your hands to your mask. If you touch your mask or adjust it once it's on, so make sure that you're washing your hands before applying your mask and then also before you take it off. And we'll get into hand hygiene in just a second. So last but not least, all right, hand hygiene is the most important thing you can do, not just to protect yourself from COVID, but to protect yourself from everything, bacteria, viruses, fungus, all right? Anything that can be a contagion, it's so important for you to wash your hands, and that helps you maintain good health. The recommendation is about 20 seconds of good scrubbing. All right, so sing happy birthday. Like I said in the previous slide, you definitely want to wash your hands before applying your mask and then before you touch it to remove your mask. And then for the 3rd time, once you've removed the mask and you put that in the dirty clothes, then you need to wash your hands again. All right, it's important not to forget underneath your nails and your thumbs. So really make sure you get in the webs of those fingers all the way around and go up your wrist at least 2 inches as well. All right. And then once you've washed your hands, do not touch your face, because your face can be a source of virus and bacterial products as well. So here's a great video that a nurse made, kind of to describe what we call cross-contamination, or taking viral particles from one area and applying it to another. And she explains why gloves should not be worn.
So let's say I'm in my car, I'm at fire, I'm getting ready to go into the store, so I put my gloves on, all right? And then I grab my cell phone. For this purpose, this little piece of cardboard here is going to be my cell phone. So now I go into Meijer, walking around, I got my phone, maybe it's in my pocket, or maybe it's on the cart, okay? And I grab my wipes and I cleaned off my cart and I cleaned everything off, but I still have my gloves on. So here now I'm in Meijer, I'm getting my groceries, and I reach for something, and let's just say I reached for toilet paper, right? If you can find any, some toilet paper. Well, take my toilet paper and I put it in my cart, and now as you can see, I have all these germs on my hands from my toilet paper. But it's in my cart, but it's on my gloves. That's fine, right? It's on my gloves. But now I'm walking along and my phone rings. So I've now touched my hands together a couple times, and I reach for my phone, and I have a text message from my husband telling me to get more chicken. We need chicken tonight for dinner. So let me text him back. Okay, honey, I got it. I'll get us some chicken. Okay, so I put my phone back in my cart and continue reaching for things, continue getting groceries, and then, I just keep touching everything. Oh, my nose itches here. The itch, my nose. Okay, now my phone's ringing. It's my mom. She needs me to get her something. Hi, hello, hi, Mom. What can I do for you? Oh, hi. Oh, my goodness, look at those bacteria. Oh, but now here, it's okay. It's totally fine because I'm wearing my gloves. I have my gloves on. I'm so safe in my gloves, right? And, I'm done. I paid. I'm at the grocery store. I'm all done. I paid. My phone's back in my pocket. I get to my car. I reach for my car door handle, and then I'm all done with these gloves, and I don't want these dirty gloves in my car, right? So what should I do with my gloves? Oh, let's see, you take them off appropriately, and they belong in the trash can, people. Instead of putting them in the parking lot next to your vehicle, please put them in the trash. So now your gloves are off, your hands are clean, you're in your car, you're safe, right? But, your phone rings again. Oh no, let me pick up my phone here. Oh, hello. Look, this is called cross-contamination. There's no point in wearing gloves if you're not going to wash your hands every time you touch something. There's no point, friends. So, do whatever makes you feel safe, but remember, there is some science here, and all this fear is just manifesting people into being crazy and not acting very smart. So one, go ahead, wear your gloves, but you need to clean your hands all the time. Don't touch your face. Don't touch your dirty phone. Look at this dirty, disgusting phone that got all over my face. Secondly, throw your gloves in the trash. They do not belong in the parking lot on the ground. All right, I'm done.
I love that she got on her soapbox. It is very, very important to do the right thing with your gloves, and to remember that your gloves now act as a fomite. So fomite is an inanimate, oh my God, y'all, I'm almost done. It is a table, a box, your phone, something that's not living, that can carry germs, that can carry viruses and bacteria. And the more porous something is, the harder that a virus has, or a harder time a virus has to be able to live on it. So for instance, a cardboard box, the virus may be able to live on a cardboard box for approximately 3 hours. Then you get to a stainless steel table. Well, the virus may be able to live on for up to 24 hours Plastic, they say it could live up to 2 to 3 days. So now you have your porous hands where if you had washed your hands, that virus could not have survived. But you've put on latex or nitrile gloves, and now that has removed those pores, and the virus can actually be sustained on those materials longer than it could have been had you just washed your hands. All right. So they did another study based, because we hear all the time, well, if you don't have soap and water, we can just sanitize your hands using an alcohol gel. Well, alcohol gel is great, but it's not perfect, and especially not if your hands are soiled or they're dirty. And as my children have finally figured out, if you put alcohol sanitizer on your hands and there's dirt on them, and you start to try to rub it all in, you get these balls of grossness, all right? Whatever is on their hands at that moment. It's probably Cheetos or peanut butter, I'm just saying. But that is just all of that nasty soil, right? That is just balled up on your hands. So it doesn't get rid of that, but it can help to clean your hands. But there are some caveats. So do you remember the parts of the virus that I talked about? It's RNA, which kind of carries the recipe for making the virus. Protein, which is the exit off the highway, and it's how it actually attaches to your cells. But all of that is surrounded by a lipid membrane. Well, the two types of alcohol that we use for cleansing both our hands and surfaces are ethyl alcohol and isopropyl alcohol. And both of these are what we call amphiphile compounds. It means that they both love water-loving or hydrolytic things, and they can do lipolytic things, which is fat. But what they're really good at is alcohol denatures protein. And so it kind of breaks down those protein markers. And if the alcohol has broken down the protein, then that virus can't attach to your cells. But remember, those protein markers are surrounded by fat. Now, alcohol gel can break down fat, but it's not very good at it, and it takes a really long time for it to happen. So when you do use hand sanitizer, then you have to let it dry, and you have to give your hands time to be able to break down that fatty membrane around the virus so that then it can get to the protein and then blast away that protein marker. All right. My kids are horrible at it. They'll squeeze some hand sanitizer and they'll rub it on really quick, and then what's still left, they'll just drop it. Or my favorite is, while their hands are still wet, they'll wipe their hands on their shirt. All right, well, now you might as well not have done anything. All right. So yes, hand sanitizer is good as long as it has an alcohol content of 60% or higher. But there was a study done in 2009, and they were looking at the H1N1 virus and the rhinovirus, which is basically the virus that causes the common cold. And they did a comparison between soap and water and using these 60% alcohol gels. And what they found was that soap and water were way superior in eliminating those viral particles than alcohol was. So if you have a choice, wash your hands with soap and water. Do it for 20 seconds and really, really scrub. That plus actually wearing a mask appropriately and not touching it once you've applied it. And definitely making sure it, once again, covers your nose and your mouth. These things are the best things that you can do in this crazy time. All right. So what I hope that you've gotten from my little presentation is that breathe. All right. We're going to get through this. We all just have to do the right thing, and we have to be consistent. So it is so important that you just wash your hands, you socially distance, and if you can't do that, that you wear a mask. But once you have that mask on, it needs to be a reminder and a barrier for you to never touch your face. because we have so many mucous membranes and so many entrances to our body from our face, and that is how the virus invades. So you can't just get COVID with a fairy wand, right? Boop, and now you have it. It actually has to find its way into your body. So by doing these things, you can protect yourself and cover those entrances, and that's your best bet. All right. So if we have any questions, I think we have time. Let's see. Oh, thanks. Oh, thank you guys. I really appreciate that. It's christina.blevins@tccd.edu. Now, if we could only stop the conspiracy theory. Oh, Lord, yes. It was not man-made, all right? It came from a bat. Don't eat bats, just like the H1N1 came from pigs. But yeah, there's a lot of scary stuff out there. There's a lot of misinformation. Don't listen to it. It really is that simple. Wash your hands, all right? Wear your mask and cover your nose and mouth. If we all do that and we do it consistently, we're gonna get through this. I promise, all right? So any other questions? What is the incubation time for contact to symptoms? That's a really good question. So the reason why they say 14 days of quarantine is because once you've been exposed to the virus, then they have found that up to 14 days afterwards, you can then develop symptoms. Most people that are testing positive for COVID and that are asymptomatic, they actually begin to, if they are going to get symptoms, they usually develop symptoms within 3 days. So you may still be what we call a super spreader, right? Which means that you have COVID inside of you, and that COVID virus is shedding. So every time you exhale, if you cough, if you sneeze, you are shedding particles of that virus. But the longer you are from the day you were exposed or your last day of being symptomatic, the less of that virus is left in your body to be spread or to be exhaled, if you will. So your contagiousness, if you will, decreases every single day. But even if you're particle spreading or particle shedding, and those particles are not very fresh, you still could expose someone. And our geriatric population, or those of us who are immunocompromised, in a healthy person, that particle that's kind of wussy may not do anything to them. But if you're old, if you have comorbidities, or your immune system's crap, then they may be susceptible to the virus. All right, so let's see. If we are symptomatic, is there a way to test for it? Would it come up? Oh, asymptomatic. Yeah, Taylor, that's a great one. Right now, no. Unfortunately, in the United States, we're not testing well enough. So, and we don't have as many tests as they're having in other countries. So my recommendation is that if you have a known exposure to someone who tested positive for COVID, now you should get tested. But if you do not, then don't. All right. Still, if you're maintaining that social distance, you're washing your hands, and then wearing a mask when you are near other people, then that's probably the best bet. And the joys of teaching from home and speaking from home, my neighbor's mowing his lawn. Awesome. So I hope you guys can't hear that. All right. Is there anything else? Can we get COVID twice? They don't know. They don't know. I did read a research study that said that those people who tested positive and were asymptomatic, when they retested for their antibodies were not at a therapeutic level. It means that they were no longer immune after about 8 weeks. But those patients that had symptoms, and in fact, the worse your symptoms are, the higher number of antibodies you're going to have. And what they think is going to happen is that your immunity would last longer. But there's still just so many questions. They don't really know the answers. But that's their thinking with the research that they've done already and with our experiences with other similar coronaviruses such as SARS. Anything else? Peggy asks if after a week from exposure and there are no symptoms, then they're okay. No, after 2 weeks. So, and because the symptoms have been so crazy, we've had some people they just lose their sense of smell and taste. We have other people who have needed to be put on a respirator. Our symptoms are so just crazy and across the board that they don't know. So really, CDC says 14 days, and that's what I would abide by. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Christine. I appreciate it. All right. Well, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. I know that I am done for the day, and it's only Tuesday. So hopefully we'll get through this Connections Week. I've been really impressed with everything that they've done so far. So thank you for being here with me this afternoon. And if I can ever be of any help, please let me know.